Hi,
Hey,
Todd.
Sarah.
What's up?
Nice
I'm more
mic.
Brandon than you today.
I know. Nice headphones. Nice mic.
Hi,
How are you?
everyone.
Good.
I'm
Yeah. How's
great.
everyone doing? This is great. This is earlier today. I hosted and moderated a panel with Lars from Compass and MindMed and others, and it was great. But I was like, it was so serious, and I think we get to have fun, right? Like we work together, we know each other, and I'm grateful for PsyTechglobal for putting on this great conference and really educating the public. And you know what's neat about educating the public is that's like really one of our core missions over at Light Holland, and I think. Me being the CEO, you being our chief technology and innovation officer, and a company that we acquired through you, which was Radix Motion, the CEO that you are of. Technology is such a big part of educating people. And the beautiful thing that I was learning through some of the questions I actually asked earlier, Sarah, in the other panel was just about how many people actually have access to like cell phones, right? Who don't even have access to Medicare. Like
Yep.
more people have access to cell phones than they have to actual medicines. Like it's wild if you think about it. So at least it's a
The
great part
internet
for
has done a great job of getting everywhere in
Yeah.
many ways. It's
They-
pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing. So why don't we just jump into it? I don't normally write down questions, but we were doing prep, you and I, for the other stuff, and we figured we'd do some prep for this one just to come across pretty professional. And as opposed to just kind of winging it, which I would typically have done in a media career. But you're such a bright person, like Sarah Hash is like I'm literally her biggest fan, and I can't even believe she's is now like really just like completely on this top level with Light Holland, because we get access to her brain, not just her creations. And I think what's so important is you really understand the stuff, like what do classic psychedelics do to the brain, and what is that importance we just heard from that last panel of set and setting?
Exactly. I've been hearing a lot of people today say how important set and setting is, and I would really love to give a 3-minute introduction that will, I hope, explain to people why it's so important and what is different about psychedelics than other substances. So I'm going to do a really quick screen share, and just to show you, images speak louder than words sometimes. So I'd like you to imagine your brain is building sandcastles. That's how we actually create our reality. And when we actually do this, so what's happening is the sand, imagine the sand is like the sensory information that's coming into your brain constantly. You're hearing things, you're seeing things, there's touch, there's smell, constant sand is coming through. And your brain has these buckets, right? And it uses these buckets that are actually based on your previous knowledge base that you've learned, especially when you were a kid. And it takes all the sand and puts it into buckets to create your reality. So this is based on a framework in neuroscience that's called the predictive coding framework. Now, what happens in psychedelics is that this 5-HT2A receptor, a serotonin receptor, it actually gets activated and gets these buckets that your brain has to break down. So usually your brain thinks in these usual buckets that are based on your childhood, potentially your childhood trauma. And while you're on psychedelics, these buckets are broken down, and now there's a whole new brain. There's a whole new reality. All the sand is still coming through, so much of it, right? And even more than usual because your usual buckets can't deal with it. And now we're getting buckets from all these different parts of your brain trying to make sense of this incoming sand. And that's why it's absolutely so important to be in an environment that can create new healthy buckets, right? If we're in an environment that is scary, unhealthy, we're not safe, that will affect us. The buckets that we create under psychedelics will be just as strong and can be just as traumatizing as they can be healthy. So that's really the importance here. And I'm not going to go into too much of explaining
screen,
this.
by the way, Sarah, are we seeing your screen? I'm not.
You should be.
I don't know if I'm seeing it. Yeah, but maybe that's just because I'm in a certain room with you.
Yeah, I hope they are, and if not,
Okay.
imagine buckets
Okay.
and sand coming through.
I
So
apologize.
I'm
Maybe
not
someone
going to
can let
go
us know.
into like I have this whole model here, but I've given a lot more deeper lectures about this, and today I want to focus more on technology and education. But I really recommend people read a little bit more about this predictive coding framework. I have lectures out there and a paper that really explain this and explain how under different conditions the same type of plasticity can cause different effects. If we're in a dark place, for instance, we get much more visuals because the sensation, the sound we're getting is less clear. It's more noisy. So suddenly our buckets have even more freedom and we can start like inventing things that aren't really there. Versus if you're in a forest or maybe taking a hike and there's really beautiful conditions, then suddenly you can see animal footprints or leaves that are so clear and so high definition because your buckets get fitted to this data. And if there's any people from like AI that are doing machine learning, we really see so much overlap between our brain and these deep neural networks. And psychedelics basically let you just change the biases of your neural network and start playing and really reprogramming your brain. So that's why that's like so important to give accessibility to people, right? Like we don't want this, at least I don't want this controlled by anyone. I think that's like the biggest fear. If there's such a tool that basically increases plasticity, who's controlling it? That's going to be like the core factor of how this gets used. And I think that's what I do love about our company, that we're really trying to just give people the tools, give them the knowledge, make them informed, believing in everybody's brain has 86 billion neurons. Everybody is capable of learning these things if you teach it to them in a fun, interactive way. You don't need to speak academic papers to understand the basics and to understand safety. Yeah.
And we'll explore in a moment some of those ways that the company is doing that. And so what needs to happen then to increase the access to psychedelics and for psychedelics so that people not only can get them, but maybe potentially benefit from them and, these types of things, support structures, education, et cetera?
Yeah, so we're looking at, I think, a few avenues. One, there's the regulations, and that's a lot that Todd, you're on that side, thankfully, and you can tell us more, about what you're doing, talking to governments and providing governments with data, because it's still quite scary. People are still in the closet, even though I'm gonna, admit, I think almost all of my network uses this as tools. At least in Oakland, it's decriminalized and we're not criminals where I currently live. But without changing the regulations, it's still quite scary. And we're sort of stuck in the closet, and something that we really need to change. So that's on one side. And then on the other side, it's providing people with support structures. And I don't think I need to tell this to anybody that's lived, at least in America. I hope Canada's better. I really, really hope. And Europe, at least I do know, is better. But the US, mental health care is broken. Healthcare is pretty broken, but mental health care is massively broken. If you need to get any type of help, you need to be able to navigate the bureaucracies of, getting that help and getting your insurance to maybe, if you're lucky enough to even have insurance, pay you back and connect you with a therapist and all these things that, if you're depressed or if you're suffering from something, even without suffering from something, thinking about doing that bureaucracy is causing, me suffering. So I've just seen people that are absolutely unable to navigate this system. So we need to give accessibility to support structures. It needs to be as easy as a computer game, as easy as an app on your phone that can give you access to the help that you need, that can give you access to a support community, that can help you deal with difficult moments and difficult times and help you navigate these choices. What types of drugs do you want to be doing? And this is on a wide spectrum. Like, do you want to be drinking coffee every day even? Like, these things have such vast effects on our body, and we just take them for granted without any type of feedback, without any type of support in society. So I think that's a really, really big thing that needs to happen. And we're luckily enough, like, we are starting to see a little bit of this starting. I'm gonna keep plugging in Fireside because I'm a really big supporter of theirs. They're providing free peer support for psychedelic, for people that are on psychedelics or people that need integration. So you can just text them, message them, get on a phone and talk to somebody that will hold space for you, that will help you, you know, calm down if you're in a difficult moment on psychedelics. So this is, you know, a really great start. And I really hope that we see also the pharmaceutical companies and, you know, the other companies that you were talking to actually invest in that route, making things accessible, simplifying the process, not just forcing people to go through loops and loops of endless bureaucracy in order to get the help that they really need.
Yeah, and again, no company at this stage can make a medical claim, but I think we're all in it for the exact same reason, because we believe we can at some point with careful research. And you know, Light Holland is, it's a big voice, right? And I said this earlier today, where some call us a polarizing voice, and quite frankly, I kind of like that. It means we're getting attention, but we're getting attention because, and hang on a second here, excuse me, because we're not afraid to talk about the access, right? We're not afraid to talk about, and you just mentioned it, you don't have to be academia. And this is where I call, quite frankly, you know, BS on a lot of the big pharma styled structured psychedelic companies. And don't get me wrong, we want them to succeed, because if they succeed in becoming a big pharma company with a standardized, you know, synthetic drug of whether it's psilocybin or something else, that is great news, because there's going to be a lot of the population that wants to take their drugs that way to hopefully help with the mental health crisis.
Yeah,
but where I call a bit of
that really need that, and you know, that require a doctor's stamp, and it's absolutely great, like, to have that as an option for people who
as an
want
option.
That, have the money, have the health insurance, and have the ability to navigate these systems. But guess what? That's not you know, I don't know exact numbers, but it's not the majority of people.
No, it's not practical.
Access to this. Yeah.
And without a doubt, I mean, we you know, pulled up that stat earlier today where 2 billion people on this planet, 2 billion, don't have access to any sort of form of medications or medical systems even. So they can't even get simple prescribed medicines that you would probably, like a penicillin, that you would think would be so easy to get still. And it's not yet. Now we're talking about psychedelics maybe being able to change the world one day, but yet we're going to eliminate and not ignore 1/4 of it. So to me, this is where Light Holland is very important in what we're trying to achieve here. And back to the BS part, a lot of these individuals who started the big pharma companies and stuff you've heard from today, they talk about it in a very academia level, and I respect them for it. But a lot of them have used psychedelics, and they've used them and said that they've been transformational for their lives. And they've got them, whether they're in legal markets like where we're at in the Netherlands, where we're selling magic truffles and we have a farm, and we have microdose packs, and we'll get into our responsible use that we're putting them out there. But it at that point, I you know, I didn't say this earlier today, maybe I should have, but it almost sounds elitist. And the last thing we want to be in a psychedelic community and in a sector that really is looking to have empathy and to love and to, you know, elevate people and try to get, you know, minds focused. And listen, I'm a massively anxious person, like debilitating at times. And I can tell you, when I've microdosed, it's helped me. So anecdotally, I'm allowed to say that, not making a company claim. And if that could help for me, like, I want others for it to help them. But what's been so wonderful about working with Sarah and what we're doing now for Light Holland is providing those tools, the different technology aspects about what's so important by having a legal framework that we're working within, potentially other legal frameworks that hopefully we do want to work in one day, like a Measure 109 in Oregon. But maybe what can we do, Sarah, to help governments, maybe, if they'll listen to us, because of the stuff that we've enacted through technology that can be that different support and that different educational tool, not only for the end consumer, but for us as well as the company.
Yeah. All right. So governments are there's two things that are happening, right? There's the clinical research that we talked about that's slowly getting approved, and then there's an approach that I'm trying to push with the help of Red Light Holland, which is big data. We keep saying there's anecdotal data all over the place. Psychedelics have been used throughout history in human civilization, and since at least the 70s, really used for therapy too. And microdosing's been around for a while too. Can we get that data in a form that we can actually do science on and look at that data and say, this is who it's helping, maybe this is who it's not helping, right? There might be various different things that microdosing is really specifically helping for. We just don't know because nobody's gathered that data. And that's what we're trying to do with our iMicro app. It's live right now. And it's a microdosing journal app, privacy first. We don't even ask for your email. But for people who are willing to volunteer, and we have more than 50% of the people that are using it have already volunteered to share their data for research. And it's anonymized data. We don't know who they are. We don't even know their name, but we do know what their goals are for microdosing. We do know how much they're dosing. We do know we're getting body measurements about how they move, how they stand. This is very, I'm going to say, radical. We're the first type of research that's looking at our bodies, at our embodiment and how these substances affect our body. And again, we're not even looking at the video. We're literally taking data points using machine learning to just look at these high-level movement patterns and posture from people. And we're putting all this together, and hopefully once, this is quite new, it's we've been out there for like maybe two months. Once we have enough data, we can start analyzing it and come to governments and come to researchers and come to the people too and say, listen, this is what we're seeing around microdosing. And the big dream is to be able to do what's called predictive models. It's quite hard to find, at least, according to our therapist in the Netherlands, who's been, he's an expert microdoser. He's been using microdosing with clients for years now. And it's quite hard to find your dose. What is sometimes, they were actually talking about this in the previous call that was here. It was quite interesting, right? Because pharmaceutically, microdoses are way, way lower. But when humans say microdosing, it means a dose that's low enough for you to not interfere with your normal life. And in fact, make you more efficient, more focused or more energized. So it's a type of dose that you won't go all like trippy and you won't have visuals, but you will get some extra magic, right? And how much is that for who? It's very different. It might be changing based on, your neurochemistry, what you ate for lunch. So we're really hoping to be able to use all this big data to create predictive models. So then one day when somebody starts microdosing, that journey is much easier. They come, they say, what they want to use microdosing for. We get some physiological data about them. And based on that, we can say, listen, based on the science, based on, thousands of people that we've gathered data from, this is what we think you should start from. And always check with yourself, right? And that's what we're doing with this app. We also have our therapist, Jeff Hamburg, who actually does mindfulness meditation practices with people online to help them understand, like, oh, wait, maybe I dosed a bit too much and it's making it harder for me to sleep, or it's harder for me to sit down and I want to lower my dose a little bit. So these are things that you really need to notice about yourself. And I think that's it needs to come together. There needs to be support circles around with professionals, but bringing the knowledge to the people, practicing behavior change, practicing noticing what's happening with you. That's something that really the healing needs to happen in each person,
And the other thing that we're doing with, it is about technology and education, this talk here, Sarah, is the virtual reality and the augmented reality and things that we've enacted and are there. You can buy in the Steam store today, in fact. let us know a little bit about that too. Obviously, I know about it, but for others who haven't followed the Red Light Holland story, and how important that we feel technology coupled with providing education is for people to learn more, so they can feel more comfortable with these sensitive, edgy ingredients.
Yeah, so we created a VR experience called Wisdom, where you get to actually hold the psilocybin model. And, for me, I keep saying this, but it really was like, and I've done neuroscience, I know how this molecule works. But even in academia, I didn't get access to holding the molecule, to seeing the actual receptor in 3D. My co-founder, Matt, did an amazing job, using the latest scientific tools to be able to bring that 3D model into our not only eyes, but into our ability to look into it. And it's this cute little puzzle. You're holding the psilocybin molecule, you can see how it fits in. And we teach people what happens to their brain. We teach people harm reduction skills, making sure, to be in a safe environment with people that they trust. Just basic things that we, anecdotally know about microdosing, that you don't want to be dosing every day. It's pretty important to take a few days off. And we're doing it in a fun way. This is not something that's like, oh, you're going to read a paper. You're going to be dancing. You're going to be seeing beautiful visuals. You're going to learn what synesthesia is. And yes, it could also be overwhelming. And if it is, then maybe take a lower dose of psychedelics, or maybe make sure you're really taking, have the support that you need, and maybe don't do it. It's not, nothing is for everyone. And if through experiencing this type of simulation that stimulates somewhat, we can't do the same thing that psychedelics do. I can't break down these biases in your brain. I can't do that. But I can increase the noise level. I can increase the sand that's coming into your system with VR. So we can create the same type of side effect using VR. And if even that's too much for you, then take it easy. That's important. We don't want people to do no harm, is I think a really important thing for companies that are putting products on the market.
The neat part about it for me, for the virtual reality experience, is because it's educational, right? But it sort of mimics that microdosing feeling, and you've created the best to do that. Like you said, it's, you can't fully recreate it, and everyone has their own individual experiences anyway. But for me, I'm colorblind, and there's a part in the virtual reality where you're playing a xylophone, and the colors are popping up, and your senses are heightened. You're hearing sound, and it's really neat to do. And for some reason, those colors at that moment, and maybe because there's sound associated to it too, so it really determines the color, so it's easier for me to clarify. That is very similar to my experience when I do microdose, because when I microdose, for sure, colors are more vibrant. In fact, I would love to see if it's actually correcting my color blindness. And there are some sort of brief studies, not from our company, that talk about that. But that really resonates with me, because colors don't normally pop the way they do in that virtual reality experience in my world, and they really do. So I think that's just one really neat little nugget of it that I quite love. And then there's a lot of this, and you mentioned about it, Sarah, but maybe mention a little more, describe a little bit more about the body movement data, because I think this is really, really interesting, because I think anyone watching right now or later can sort of personalize this. I think they can really understand, if they're in a bad mood that day, or if they're lethargic, or if they're depressed for some reason, something's on their mind, they're slouching, they're not in the moment, they're not they're not propped up and good to go. And this is very specific data that you can collect.
Yeah. So, there's a problem with neuroscience research and it's in the tools. We can't actually look at brains and fMRIs and EEGs while people are moving. So there's a lot of lack of data about how these substances are affecting our body. And this isn't just psychedelics. It's any medical, thing that's out there is not really looking at our body. Maybe they take blood pressure measurements, but we have, with the current ability of technology and AI that can actually understand how we move, we have this ability to start looking at this data. And that's what I call, embodied technology, is technology that creates feedback loops with our body. So first we need to understand our body, then we can provide the feedback of how is your posture, how anxious, or I move a lot. I know that. Sometimes I move even more. Sometimes I'm, like you said, like just slouched and low energy. And sometimes I can notice it myself. But wouldn't it be like awesome if there was some type of intervention that would notice, show me the data, and be able to help me? Like, okay, we see you're in a low energy state. How about you put your social media offline for a bit, go for a walk, go dance a bit, and just like create healthy feedback loops. So I think that's really, I guess, like my like end goal is creating feedback loops with technology and between humans that can then just increase our wellness through understanding. A lot of this is just like lack of data, these black boxes that we're in. We don't know. This brain is super complicated, all this information that we're processing. So any type of help that we can get from technology and from experts, and bringing that expert knowledge to the people, I think that's how we increase access. We get this data through technology into people's hands and connect experts to these end users. That's my hope.
Well, as the CEO and director of Light Holland, it's easy for me to say that I love what we're doing, because we're kind of doing it now, and we're doing almost like real life clinicals. It feels like, I know it's not as controlled as a typical pharma, clinical environment. So I don't necessarily want to give that comparison, because that shouldn't be misleading. But to me, at least, it's real, genuine, authentic, and we're learning from it. And we're also connecting with people, meaning individuals that can give us their personal experiences and sort of feel comfortable doing it. They're doing consensually. They're doing it, again, without having to provide an email and stuff. So they can feel comfortable in doing it. But what we're also trying to do is give back to them. We're creating a thing called the Wisdom Truffle. And I know it sounds kind of interesting for people, Wisdom Truffle. Well, it is a companion aid. It's a meditation aid. It's a companion figure. And it's something that is really being developed. And you talk about technology and education and feedback loop and stuff. And this really is another interesting way that Light Holland is trying to approach the psychedelic sector and the psychedelic space, not necessarily to learn in this case, but to really help give back in a way, to let people live in the moment and to do different things maybe that they wouldn't think of doing it if they didn't have a companion figure in front of them. Sarah, maybe you can talk about the technology that we're putting into that, and why it is very unique, by the way, and also why it really, we think, can kind of help with this sort of live in the moment lifestyle, which is so important to kind of giving your brain just a break of the daily grind, and the grind also online.
Yeah, so we're creating 3 different versions of this. The small one is really a meditation aid, and we're hoping it's gonna, the first sensor that connects to it is gonna be a heart rate sensor, but maybe hopefully in the future we can get other sensors to give you different types of biofeedback. And there's a lot of research on how much biofeedback can really help people understand what's going on with themselves, but also do it in a fun way. You're gonna get like really beautiful trippy lights connecting to your heartbeat. Be able to do that with friends. Like, don't just meditate by yourself, especially now in times of COVID, when we're so disconnected. You could be out there in Toronto and I could be here, and we sit together and just take a few moments to connect to our breath together, and I get your heart rate showing up on my wisdom, and you get mine showing up on yours. So that's something that I've been do
you have a picture of that?
I have an actual like video even we can show that has a bunch. It's a 40-second video with all our tech. I think it's playing now. Is it playing now?
Yeah, I don't see it. So someone would have. Oh yeah, here we go. This one's.
So this is the VR section. We can jump. This is the psilocybin receptor. This is our wisdom character in VR. This is the iMicrodose app we talked about with body measurements. Did I talk right out here the other day? This is a little song that's a part of it, making the education
it's a pleasure to meet you all. Fun fact about
We're having
me,
podcasts. Please
small.
join our monthly podcast. And this is Wisdom's prototype, where you can currently see the heart rate sensor activating. And the larger one is going to hold your cell phone and remind you to put your cell phone down. So that's also quite exciting. So we should finish. We keep getting notes here on the chat. But I do want to tell people like one thing. We're at the beginning of this new type of change that we're seeing with psychedelic the psychedelic ecosystem. And like, I would really like to empower people that if they do want to join this idea of creating responsible accessibility, it really is up to them. You know, we all have power, we all have voice, we all have money, we all have our networks. And if we can utilize that, then personally, I think pharmaceutical companies don't have a chance, but to stop us, right? Like, this is my greatest fear of having, and I'm happy for pharmaceutical companies to succeed. I'm just not happy for them to tell me what I can't and can't do with my own body.
And you know, I can provide some statistics for that. I mean, this is the stuff that a lot of the big pharma companies won't tell you. And by the way, we believe in the science. You know, part of the stuff that we're discussing over at our company is you know, potentially, you know, getting a mere life sciences license in a place like St. Vincent. We're doing productive talks with them for months now. We're talking about a merger to get working with 𝗙𝗪𝗔𝗍𝗍𝒃, which is looking to get a controlled dealer's license. So don't get me wrong. We would never talk down on this kind of stuff, but we believe that there's so much part of this world that this is a natural occurring product, and that the way you can do it within legal frameworks, and as long as you do it in this responsible manner, which we feel we are as a company, that there can be a lot of great things that come out of our approach and our main approach. You know, you might not know, but I talked earlier about the 2 billion people that don't have access to medical systems. 1 in 4 Americans skip medication because they can't afford the medical costs. You know, there's just all these different numbers here. You know, 30 million people in the USA don't even have
prescription medication, right? We have a lot of abuse of happening, overdoses from people that are getting this from their doctors and from pharmaceutical companies. So, and that's why, in my opinion, you know, the answer is education. If the end user knows what's happening with their brain, if their end if the people have these easy access to support structures, then hopefully also the prescriptions that they're getting won't be abused and won't harm them.
Yeah,
so that's
and our market,
side of the story.
For sure. And our market research is just showing that like, you know, younger generations are really wanting natural access to many things. If you think about even their sugar intake or their meat intake, and they're going a little bit more vegan and they're looking more at vegetable options or different protein options. People are, we forget, I don't know how many people are, say, maybe under 35 in this conference, but I would say the majority probably aren't. And if you speak to under 35-year-olds and we go and do market research between 18 and 34, you're going to see that which is great. They care about the environment and they care about the choices that they make for their bodies. And you know, probably sadly, many of them have experienced things within the big pharma community that you know, was terrible within their family, whether it's an opioid crisis, a benzo, an SSRI that didn't work for someone who had mental health issues and maybe made it and triggered it to be a little bit worse. These are like real case studies that are very sad. And then you could I always say to people, go and hashtag microdose or microdosing on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Just hashtag it and read up what people are saying. And we can't ignore what people are saying. And I have a feeling, like Sarah said, you can empower yourselves, you can learn more. And PsyTechGlobal and these types of conferences are amazing for the whole grandiose spectrum of the new psychedelic sector, which in a way isn't new because it's existed for thousands of years, especially the last 50 years, except for, you know, that little short time there when there was the big war on drugs in the States and stuff. But long story short, everyone has the ability, back to technology and back to education, to educate yourselves, not just listen to one or two sides of the story, because there's a lot of different sides to the story. And if there's people who want access now, we're seeing organizations like 𝗙𝗪𝗪 in Canada, which is getting compassionate grounds access for those who have terminally ill, sadly, and those who you know, are suffering from severe trauma, and they're talking about how wonderful this stuff is. There's been documentaries, and so we encourage everyone to go and learn more. We don't want to tell you as Light Holland to go and do this, but we just wanted to show you a little tidbit about how responsible our company's being with the technology and educational aspect. And we couldn't do it without Sarah 𝗏𝗏𝗏, our Chief Technology and Innovation Officer, and of course her company, Radix. Well, I guess our company now, but Radix Motion. And this is amazing. This is, you know, all of this, and, you know, look at the technology today, just being able for us to provide some of this talk with you. So thanks to PsyTechGlobal. I think we're the last speakers of the day of the conference, but it's been really, truly amazing. amazing. And it's been a good 48 hours of support for the sector as a whole. And we'll continually work hard for everybody to provide them with what we think is great corporate governance and great information as this sector moves forward. And hopefully as more regulations open up and on the science side for those other companies, hopefully they can prove out what we all think, hopefully some of them can, to make positive change for mental health.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out, various social medias and our contacts on the internet. I'm always happy to give, free lectures about psychedelics and the brain and predictive coding. That's a thing I'm really passionate about. And maybe last thing, Todd, I think what does make us unique, we started with this, so we might as well end, is the fun, right? Like, it's okay to also have fun with psychedelics. And my opinion, fun is not a dirty word. Fun is a mental health critical component.
And that's so importantly said. Again, make sure you're in safe spaces. We're not going to sit here and try to say that we can provide you information on how to go and do this type of stuff. But if you're learning about it, a lot of people do just want to have fun in life, and there's people choose different ways of fun. So again, we can't advocate. We have to be very careful on how you use psychedelics and make sure you do it within legal frameworks. But at the end of the day, you're right, Sarah. We can't stop human beings, especially in a time of COVID when it's been very difficult, to remember how to have fun again. And there's ways you can.
Yeah. So thanks, everyone.